Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Grow My Salon Business podcast. This is the podcast for the ambitious stylist and salon owner. And I'm your host, Anthony Whitaker. And as always, it's great to have you here with us today. Thank you for the reviews for the show. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't yet left us a review, then I would be grateful if you did over on the Apple Podcast app. Ratings and reviews really are helpful and they're greatly appreciated. They do matter in the rankings of the show, and they also help other people to find the podcast. And of course, I love to hear what's been helpful to you. All you need to do is go to the Apple Podcast app, search Grow My Salon Business, scroll to the bottom of the page and leave a review, and we would be very appreciative. So with that said, on with today's show. Now, I know of many hairdressers. In fact, I was once one of them when, at the beginning of my career, transitioning into becoming a business owner, I wanted to have someone else to look after the business side of things. Now, many new salon owners figure that they're good with hair, but they just want to focus on the hairdressing side of things, and they want someone else to deal with the admin side of things, legalities that go with opening a business, people problems, and most of all, the tax and the paperwork that exists around money. And they'll typically say something along the lines of, it's just not my strength. And besides, I've got someone else who I trust and who I get along with well, and they will look after the business side of things. And together we will become outrageously successful. Now, I'm sure you get the idea. And you know what? Sometimes that actually works. But often, in fact, very often, if I'm honest, it doesn't. And when it doesn't work, it can lead to parting of the ways with a few minor problems and some hurt feelings. But other times it can lead to court cases, bankruptcy, and major falling out. Now, my guest today is Mikey Denton, and unfortunately, he falls into the latter category. So today we're going to talk about why hairdressers fall into that trap in the first place, how to avoid it happening, and what are the lessons that have been learnt along the way. So with that said, welcome to the show, Mikey Denton.
Thank you, Anthony. I really appreciate this, and I'm a big fan of your show. It's fun to be on it.
No, it's really good to have you here. I'm so glad that you reached out to me. And we had that conversation, before today. And I thought to myself, do you know what? This would be a really good topic to talk about because there's a lot of salon owners that are tempted or do exactly what you did. And when I say there's a lot of salon owners, I can put my hand up and say that I was also one of them. And, I think it's a lesson and there's a story here to be told that salon owners everywhere will be able to relate to, because I know a lot of other people have done the same thing. So before we dig into the detail, for context, without saying anything that could be, problematic for you, can you just give us a summary of the journey that your business took from when you first opened a salon to when you ended up, closing and walking away from everything? So over to you.
Yeah, it all began in the end of 2014 when I decided to open up a business located in Portland, Oregon. Working at another salon, I knew some people that were investors for that company. So when I decided to open up my own, I reached out to whoever I could to gather some money to open up a business. And we had a goal of $150,000. I reached out to a person who I knew, you could say I wasn't friends with, but acquaintances with.
Yeah.
They said that they would eventually like to help out. And at the time they said, but I got a lot of things going on. I'll purchase some gift cards online, through your website, because we had a website up and running. Purchase some gift cards, put that money towards my investment. We'll work out details later. In the moment, didn't think much of it. It was pretty much a handshake deal, essentially. Opened up the business June of 2015. And then, the first year was just getting it going, making sure everything was smooth. You had to train the staff, etc. In the early 2017, this person had various businesses, but one that he had taken over was a salon or a barbershop. And he wanted us to merge our businesses together. So it sounded interesting. So we explored that conversation, and along the way, would seek advice and consultations from this person, whether it be financial or preparing my taxes. I went to them to help prepare my taxes that first year, and they had an in-house bookkeeper at their office where they prepared the taxes, and all I had to do was submit it. Didn't look over. I just was like, oh my gosh, what a friend! Because I have kids. I'm behind the chair full time. I began educating. And then 2017 was when we started noticing things were weird. Because again, you're training staff, you're educating. I got kids. I'm working behind the chair. I didn't notice the clear signs in the moment, But we needed help with payroll because my wife was pregnant with our third, and she stepped away from payroll, which she was helping us with that. And that party we were working with took over payroll, and they started charging us a substantial amount to do payroll. And that's when we were like, wait a second, that's a lot of money with someone we're going to be working with, and when we would question anything, we were met with like, oh, we're doing this for you and for us, in the future, and you're again in the midst of being full-time behind the chair, the educating the kids. You're like, why would I question this? Right. I was in a lot of ways too trusting. Then when we eventually got the contracts to merge our companies together, in that moment, I just decided to have a lawyer look over the contract. And I was met with like, well, we're not trying to screw you over. Like we're not going to hurt you. It's like, all right, cool. We have nothing to worry about. I took it to a lawyer, and the lawyer informed us that it was a terrible contract and I would have lost everything. I had no rights or say of anything. And we should definitely not do this. Do not do this. And so, we really thought about it, and it's like, well, we got this far. We have all these ideas, we were talking about designs and all this stuff. But we decided it was best to not move forward with this person. We decided to cut ties, and that's where things really spiraled out of control. And we really saw the true side of someone we thought we knew. That back and forth with that person went from the end of 2017 to 2020, when things got really out of control. COVID was thrown into the mix, and eventually we were forced into closing and walking away and filing for bankruptcy.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit and let's ask the question, why did you and so many other young hairdressers who open up a business, why do we want someone else involved? Mm-hmm. Why do we want to go, well, I'm good at doing hair and you're a businessman. You'll take over the business side of things and I'll do the hair, and together we'll be outrageously successful. I know the answer for me anyway, but why do you think so many hairdressers do that?
I think because, we deal with so many people behind the chair, and we feel like we know them for that 30 or 45-minute period of time, or if you're doing color, however many hours. And we feel like we have a good read or judge of people. And maybe in a lot of ways we do. I feel like I have a good sense of people sometimes, but in other cases we're too trusting. Mm. And in this moment, I assumed, oh, they have a business that's successful. Like they know what they're doing, right? Why would I question it? And I was young and had no idea what I was doing. So I didn't think to question the obvious.
Yeah. So you wanted some help financially, some investment.
Yeah.
And they were did they ever, you said they'd buy some gift cards. They went online on your website, they're going to buy some gift cards. So, and I know you said you wanted, I think, 10 grand investment from them. So did they go on your website and get the credit card out and buy 10 grand's worth of gift cards?
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. And they said, don't actually give me the physical gift cards, just put that money towards the investment. We'll talk details later.
Right. Okay. And so the details later, was that ever done? did you ever sit down and go, right, what is our business arrangement? Like, you've invested X, what do you want in return? Do you know what I mean? Is it, were you going to buy them back out at a later date, or were they going to be long-term partners forever? I mean, how did that shape out?
Well, we had talked about a loan, and it was later on when we talked about merging companies that they came back and said, "Oh no, I'm a shareholder," or "These are towards shares," and it was like, well, we never discussed that,
Mm.
and that's how that unfolded. But really, it was just like they offered 10,000. Again, in the grand scheme of things, it seemed like such a small number.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, that I just was like, yeah, all right. To this person, 10,000 is nothing. Like, I'm sure they'll want to be paid back later. That amount plus interest is what I really thought.
Right. Okay. So there was no contract, no partnership agreement, no shareholders agreement, like nothing legal done. It was just like, you knew this guy, he knew you,
Mm-hmm.
fist bump, handshake. Yeah, it's all cool, man. Don't worry, we're going to look after you, sort of thing. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and realize that actually this all looks a bit funny here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was when we decided to part ways, and
Yeah.
they said, "Well, I want all my money back. I'm a shareholder." And we were like, "Wait, what?" And that's when we realized, when we looked over the taxes that were prepared by that party, that they
Mm.
had their person enter in that they were 18% shareholder, which we never agreed upon. And again, when you have all these things going on, why would I look at that line in my business taxes? And then those were submitted. So once it's submitted, it's done, right?
Right. Okay. So something to do with him doing your payroll and then submitting your taxes. Somewhere along the line, he's turned himself into a shareholder in your business
Yes,
without you being aware of that, without there being any legal contracts drawn up about this is a partnership and he's got 18% or whatever it is. Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
So so at that point, why couldn't you have just bought him out, like the 10 grand that he'd put in plus interest? What was it he was asking for?
Well, when we decided to part ways, we had the money to just hand over 10,000,
Yeah.
fist bump them, see you later.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And they declined and said, you know, actually, we want all of our money back, which I, of course, was like, what do you mean? And they said, well, we want $150,000 because, I'm a shareholder. And so they were accusing me of making millions of dollars. I'm running a 7-chair men's salon and we're charging $32 a haircut at the time. We're
Mm.
not raking in millions of dollars, but they had these accusations. And I realized that if someone has money, they can take it wherever they want to go.
So he valued the business at an exorbitant amount, and based on the 10 grand that he put in, that had magically turned into 150 grand. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Within the beginning of 2015 to end of 2017, he was, yeah, making that assumption.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
And so did you have any shareholding in his business? Because I know you said there was another salon, so they were meant to be being merged or something.
Mm-hmm.
So were you only going to be a partner in your existing business, not in his other salon business?
Correct. Yeah, there would be this, merging of an umbrella company with all these different, salons or barbershops. But his barbershop, I would, manage, but I wouldn't own it,
Right.
and
Okay.
I would just be kind of focusing on mine.
Right. Okay. I get it. So, like a lot of young hairdressers that go into business, they're very trusting and they're very naive about
Mm-hmm.
how business works and how other people work. And sometimes, like you say, you might have a client relationship with them, a friendly relationship with them. You think you know them, but you don't really know them at all. I often say that owning a business is possibly the best education that life can give you.
Mm-hmm.
So, so let me ask you a few questions about that. What did you learn about combining business and friendship?
To not do it, I realized then and there that there's, like, now looking into it, I realize a lot of people say don't get into business with a friend or a family member because it's just going to go haywire. But um, I just realized that, you just, with a friend, you don't know how their true colors might turn out. I know for a lot of people it works out and that's great, but I know for myself and others, it's just, you don't realize who you're dealing with, and I didn't do the proper research to just understand what I was getting into, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And the same goes, whether it be family or friends. I've learned you got to get everything in writing and very detailed, so that crisis can be averted later.
yeah. And I think what happens is when they're family or friends, you often think, well, we don't need to go and spend 5 grand with a lawyer because we trust each other. And, we're like, we're cool here. We don't
Yeah.
need to do all that. We trust each other. We've got a good relationship, a good understanding. So, what I always say, and I know that you're saying it in a roundabout sort of way, is spend the money up front to get specialist legal or financial advice because it'll be cheaper in the long run. That's the message, isn't it?
Honestly, it is, and especially when you call a lawyer, and ask for some advice, and they're like, okay, well, our rate is X amount per half hour, whatever. You're like,
Yeah, yeah.
all right, you know what? I'll just trust my friend.
Yeah, yeah. But compared to the 150 grand that he wanted, you would have been a hell of a lot better doing that right at the beginning. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Okay. So, what would you do in hindsight as a business owner that wanted investment? You wanted that 10 grand or however much it is. How would you go about that? Because there's nothing wrong with getting external investment. Necessarily. So what would you do? Would you, self-finance it? Would you look for investors, but, make sure you had some sort of legal structure put in place beforehand so that you're in control of the deal? How would you do
Mhm.
it?
At the time, the local community college had a course that was a non-credited course that potential business owners could take, and then they were coached on how to open up a business, how to operate it, etc. You are also paired with a coach to help you connect with local banks or credit unions to get loans. And that process was taking a while, and we had this timeline and goal, and so it seemed easier just to go through friends and family to gather up money. I wish we'd have just been more patient and just on my own went to a credit union or a bank, and no matter how the interest is, unless it's like insane, just went that route so that I had 100% control at least of whatever happens with that. And nowadays it's so easy to access money over various websites or like Square or whatever. And you know that's what I would honestly do now, looking back, and start small and work up. We had a big vision of a 7-chair shop and a retail store. I would have started
Mm.
small and worked my way up.
Yeah, yeah. So sort of grow at the speed of cash
Yeah, yeah,
so that you're self-financing it. Yeah,
yeah.
that's the ideal scenario. Investors can be good, but if you're going to do it, I mean, I like the idea of what you said about it, community college and doing a
Hmm.
small business course, so that you get some business, you become business savvy before you explore all these different routes, both legally and financially, what's involved and what sort of contracts you might need, and you know, um, how to best protect not just yourself, but anyone else that's involved in the business as well. Um, Talk to us about the bankruptcy side of it.
Hmm.
For a range of reasons, not all businesses work. Did you end up having to bankrupt yourself in the end?
Yeah, because my name was wrapped up with personal, like the personal and business debt were all wrapped up into one thing.
Okay.
Like if I had personal debt, it was related to the business. So at the end, it was best to file bankruptcy as a personal bankruptcy and wrap the business up with that, because if I did just the business, things could have been looped around the business and just come after me personally. So it was just best to go that route. And that included just random stuff. While we were filing, I realized that if your business has open ended gift cards, uh, that luckily were just with our general consumers, they can actually still come after you however many years later. So we had to contact people. When I sold the business before filing, we sold the business to our manager, or the assets of the business. Uh, the money I made from that, which was very, very, very little, I used that towards paying off those existing gift cards. We had to reach out to every single person and let them know that we were going to refund the money. And then we went ahead and filed.
Right. Okay. So, um, I mean, obviously, no one wants to go bankrupt, but for a range of reasons, businesses don't always work. I mean, Apple is a great example. In 1997, Apple almost went bankrupt, and they were only
Mhm.
saved by Microsoft. Microsoft bailed them out. If Microsoft hadn't bailed Apple out, they would have gone bankrupt in the late 90s. So, you know, there's always lessons in business for everybody.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes I know we started talking because you were listening to a previous podcast I did with Oscar Bond, where he was talking about bankruptcy.
Mhm.
And, that's how we, hooked up and had a conversation about it. What is it like for you, as you've alluded to? You've got a wife, you've got children, you had other commitments and stuff. What's it like dealing with bankruptcy? How do you come out the other end of it?
It's the idea of it at first, it just sounds just terrible, which the process is terrible. It's annoying, it's frustrating. Um, but the more podcasts I listen to or books I read or, just doing basic research, I realize that a lot of people go through it, for business or what have you. And, and I feel like nowadays we're one degree away from someone we know that has dealt with it, right? And so I reached out to those people and asked how their experiences were and how every single person I talked to or pit podcasts I listened to, they were able to say like, yeah, you know what? It sucked. But I immediately realized after that I was able to start over, and move on from whatever said debt, right?
Mm,
And I reached out to you because like I like hearing those stories still, even though I've done it and I moved on. It's nice to hear these stories and know that other people that I look up to or listen to have dealt with it or are dealing with
mm,
it. And um, I like to let people know that I went through, I dealt with it. It sucked. Here's how to maybe avoid it. Um, and once it was done and we sold the assets and filed bankruptcy and started over, I've been really focused on helping out friends or other salon owners I meet, and when they ask like I'm thinking about opening up a business, what should I do with if it's like a coworker or if it's another salon owner, hey, we're having this issue, what should I do? I just give them my advice, my honest advice, and I think that's what's been fun about life after bankruptcy and being a business owner. I'm an employee now, and I give my honest advice to people around me, and they could do with it whatever they want, but I just like to offer help.
mm.
And
How long does it last? Like you were bankrupted when 2020 or 2021?
we officially did it in 2021.
2021. So
Uh,
how long does that sort of impact you for in terms of having credit cards or being able to
mhm.
get a mortgage, all that sort of stuff?
Interestingly enough, it was chapter 7, so it's 5 years. But within after the first year, you're able to get credit cards, and uh, that's exactly what I did. Was a year later, I never had issues with credit cards before the business and during.
Mm,
So I didn't feel weird opening up another one. I did it to just start working on my credit again, and it's like a low $200 limit, just working on that credit and just trying to move on.
mm. So does it bring forward with it? I mean, I know it's still early days,
Mhm.
2024 we're talking, and this is only 2 or 3 years. Does it bring forward with it a lot of problems that won't go away for that 5 years?
Well, I like to lease cars, and when you go to trade in your lease or get a new lease, of course they see that on your record and they're going to ask about it.
Mm,
And I explain it. It's business, and because my personal debt was wrapped up in it, that's why it looks a little funky. So yeah, that has carried over, but it is what it is.
mm. Yeah. Okay. What happens to your credit rating? Does it just go to zero? You start again?
Dude, no, it actually was like 650 overnight, and then I got my credit card and was able to bump it up, so it's in the high sevens.
Okay. What about buying a house and stuff going forward? Because I
Mm.
don't know a lot about bankruptcy. I mean, I remember when Oscar was on, he said that you lose everything. whether it's a car, the house,
Mm-hmm.
jewelry, anything of any value.
Yeah.
Was it like that for you?
That's another funny thing is I lease my cars. We rent a home. One of the questions they ask you when you file for bankruptcy is if you own a boat. And I was like, what the hell? No, I don't own a boat. And I rent my home and I lease my cars. So they can't touch that. So I didn't have my house taken away. I didn't have my cars taken away. But going forward, I haven't owned a home, but it's going to be hard for the next couple of years to do so.
Yeah.
Leasing cars, now it's met with that question. I have to provide a bunch of paperwork or I just get turned down, so it's still a struggle for sure.
Yeah. Okay. But it doesn't set you completely, like you can still operate, you can still live, you can still work, you can still have bank accounts, you can still, pay for
Oh yeah,
stuff. And yeah, cool. Okay.
absolutely.
All right. So, major lessons, if you were going to go back in time and be able to give I don't know how old, 20-year-old Mikey, some business advice as a young hairdresser who is dreaming of a bright future. What are some of the things that you might want to pass on to him as being, okay, here's 3 bits of advice I'd give to you?
Is one, do your research on marketing and finances and just running a business. Like I said at the beginning or earlier, is, you know, see what courses are available, whether it be in person at your local community college or what have you, or online. Take a business class. Usually they're about a year. If they're non-credited or credited, whatever, take it. So, you could take it right now and go through a business class in 6 months or 6 weeks.
Mm.
Do that because that time is more valuable than, having everything go haywire later on if you don't do your research or you have basic understanding of business. I think the second thing is to obviously get everything in writing, everything, and invest the finances in having a lawyer look over it. Even not ChatGPT nowadays, but have a lawyer look over it. The third thing is to, there's nothing wrong with starting small. We have big goals or visions sometimes.
Mm.
If I could go back, I would do a 1-chair storefront. Probably not a, suite. There's nothing wrong with that either, but just a storefront, have a physical commercial storefront or with a couple chairs or just one, and then see where the business goes from there and customize it. Maybe the business would have been better off just being a 2-chair shop, or maybe I realized like, okay, this is how I want to grow the business into a 20 station salon or whatever.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. I think is there anything else you wanted to add?
I feel like, mentioning that I reach out to you, I think it's worth reaching out for help. I, when I was educating, I didn't know how. I was reaching out to people on like, how do I teach? How do I educate? And then I realized I could just reach out to people over Instagram and say, hey, I want to get into education. What do you suggest? And I had people respond that I really look up to. And maybe the same could be said with business. Hey, I'm thinking about opening up a salon. I follow you in your salon. What are your suggestions?
Or I'm thinking of going into partnership, or I'm thinking of taking on investment and stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So don't be afraid to ask for help.
No. And you'd be surprised.
Before you need it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking of going into partnership with somebody. What do you think the things are that I need to, investigate, before I sit down with them and have a meeting? Because that's often the thing, is that hairdressers go into these situations so unprepared, they don't know what they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't know what the questions are to ask. It's like you with this guy at the beginning, you sort of you very trusting. Oh, I guess that's how it's done. Oh, his bookkeeper's going to do my tax. Oh, great. I guess that's how it's done. He's a friend sort of thing. It's like people don't know what they don't know, do they? So I think that's a really good bit of advice, that you shouldn't be afraid to ask for help. You shouldn't be afraid to, reach out to people. What's the worst thing they can do is say no.
Yeah.
Most people will give you the time of day and say, do you know what? I wouldn't do that. Or I think you should find out A, B, and C. Or I think most people that are successful in business will say to you, the golden rule, I think, which underpins our entire conversation, is you need to get independent financial and legal advice. And if you're not prepared to do that, then you shouldn't be going into business because you're a lamb to the slaughter. So just going to your accountant, as you said, not ChatGPT, not the well-meaning next door neighbor or friend in the bar, but go to a professional, lawyer, solicitor, attorney, whatever it is, accountant, and say, I'm thinking of doing this. What is your professional advice? And it might cost you $200, $300, $400, $500, but it might save you 100,000, 150,000, or whatever you ended up being in the hole for. And that's a smart thing to do, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. And like I said, there's online courses that are free. So if you don't have the money to do so, like I get it, not having money to even just invest in it, talking to a lawyer or whatever, then look for free courses online, or hell, even going on Instagram again and looking up a lawyer and reaching out to them. They're probably going to respond with a very vague response if they do. And then say for more advice, you'd have to pay. All right, whatever. At least like you got the ball rolling.
Yeah.
And like what you said, and I happen to say all the time, is the worst thing that happens is they either say no or they don't respond. If you reach out to someone for help, they're not going to be like, oh my God, why are you asking for my help, you loser? Like I used to think that way. I used to think people would say that because that's why I was scared to ask for help. And now I realize, like, dude, whatever, ask for the help because it'll be worth it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what you just said is dead right. That they might give you a little bit of advice and then say, if you want more, I mean, obviously I can help you, but you'd need to be a client, meaning that you need to pay for it. And that's totally understandable, isn't it? It'd be a bit like if someone rang you and said, listen, I'm thinking of getting my sister to do my color at home. You might say to them, well, look, I'll give you some advice. I wouldn't do that. Or if you're going to do it, I would at least use, this product and that product, or I wouldn't try and lighten it, but if you're going to put something on that makes it darker or something that's going to wash it, do you know what I mean? You might give them a little bit of advice, but then you'd end up saying, but my recommendation really is that you go to a salon and get it done by a professional.
1,000%.
Anyway. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, listen, we need to wrap up. Whereabouts can people connect with you on Instagram or other social channels?
On Instagram, it's just at Mikey Denton, Mikey, not Mickey. We all learned the Mickey Mouse song.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's Mikey Denton. On other platforms like YouTube and TikTok, which I'm trying, is Mikey Denton _.
Got it. Okay. I will put those links on our website, growmysalonbusiness.com, and in the show notes for today's podcast. So if you're listening to this podcast with Mikey and have enjoyed it, do me a favor, share it with people who you know would enjoy it or benefit from his experience. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating and review on the Apple Podcast app. So to wrap up, Mikey Denton, thank you for being on this week's episode. And thank you for being so open and honest and sharing what have no doubt been difficult times, for you and your family. And I know it's very much appreciated by me. And I know it would have helped some people who you will never even know. You'll never even meet them, but it will make someone listening to this somewhere take advantage of your experience and, make sure they get some professional advice so that they don't repeat the same mistakes. So thank you for being on this week's episode of the Grow My Salon Business Podcast.
Dude, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.